Gadomo mitaani, wanijua tangu zamani, mimi nawe wapi kwa wapi we. Sinijaji unijui we, waujua we, wangu msimamo, simama imara, simama imara, simama imara, watu wote wakuone papapapapara, papapapapara, papapapapara. Una choko za nazo longo zako sio hoja watakuja dondoa. Una choko za nazo longo zako sio hoja watakuja dondoa. Ati wanijua tangu zamani, mimi nawe wapi kwa wapi we. Sinijaji unijui we, waujua we, wangu msimamo, simama imara, simama imara, simama imara, watu wote wakuone papapapapara, papapapapara, papapapapara. Slava. Ngoma inaitwa Simama Imara. Asanteni kwa wale mmesimama imara, asanteni sana. Lakini liandika kitambo kidogo. Ngoma yenyewe inazungumzia mambo yanaendelea hivi sasa. Na on one side inaongelesha viongozi, uongo wao, cosmetic solutions, kila siku ni story za hapo sasa. So basically kwa watu wale tuliowapoteza kwenye maandamano, tunasimama imara na nyinyi. Kwa familia zilizopoteza watu wao, tunasimama imara na nyinyi. Kwa wale ambao wako katika maandamano tukipigania haki yetu, tunasimama imara na nyinyi. Sio kukosana naye, kutengana naye, kuachana. Hapo imetosha kionjo. This next song, let's sing it for our brothers and sisters, those that we lost during this very, very difficult and trying time. Ngoma inaitwa Amina. Wangapi wanajua Amina? Sasa hii kwa heshima ya wale tuliwapoteza, kindly if you can stand, tuimbe ngoma pamoja, sio? Let's go. Lakini kama kawaida, kabla niwaage lazima niimbe nyimbo ya hapo sasa. Nakuaga mikwaheri, nakutakia laheri, jamani mpenzi. Nakuaga mikwaheri nami kukupenda misi, jamani mpenzi. Tukiwa na wewe mambo yako yenda kombo, japoni. One more time. Nakuaga mikwaheri, nakutakia la, kukupenda misi, jamani mpenzi. Thank you very much. Mbarikiwe. There we go.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can we have another round of applause for the one and only Sanepe? Anyone else grew up listening to Sanepe? Yeah, I was too young to be singing Najuta. I don't know what I was jutaring at that age, but we'll move from art right now and we'll have a conversation on digital activism, and I would like my guests to join me on stage right now. Laura, we have Laura, who is she's a journalist, a celebrated journalist. We have James. Have a seat, Laura, please. We have James, who's a digital activist. We have Winnie, who is in the tech space, in policy making. And lastly, we have Maura, who is the vice president of LSK. So, we're trying to have a conversation on digital activism, and we know that digital activism has undergone a massive transformation, especially in the last couple of weeks during the protests, and it has changed where the manner in which we leverage policies. It has enabled us to, come up with social and political change. And the first question I have is for you, Laura. How has digital activism evolved in Kenya over the past decade, particularly in the light of the protest that has been happening?
Okay. Thanks for that. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but yes, go ahead.
Okay. So when it comes, I've been a journalist for more than 20 years. And the difference is that when we started out, Facebook had just started. So Facebook was about looking for your old friends from school. And there was nothing really about activism. It was about just social media. So over the years, we started getting celebrities on social who we didn't have access to before, but people that we admire, and then that's what it was all about. But now it became more than that, because organizations started seeing that if you go on social media with the influencer that you like, then you're able to sell whatever service you're selling. You can sell soap, you can sell a school, you can do anything you want to do. But now, because it's such a very natural way of us interacting with one another, when the protest started, it just got a life of its own. All of a sudden, now, if I want any information, I can actually get it online, because there's somebody who's taken the time to put together whatever is in the ICTA bill, whatever is in the, digital for. So if you paint it that way, then that's really a powerful platform to use, that you can be able to get information, share the same information, consume the information, and make informed decisions based on that.
We know that digital platforms such as TikTok and X Spaces have played such a crucial role in these times, and more people want to understand how they can get into it. James, I know as a digital activist, could you perhaps let us know how someone can advocate for their rights as well as others through digitally? Yeah.
Pardon?
I'm asking how someone can get into digital activism, how they can advocate for their own rights as well as others.
Basically, if you are into tech, you would build an app or a website that puts out information out there, a kind of public participation, civil education kind of stuff, that gives information to Kenyans out there about governance, about law, about constitutionalism, about the rule of law, about how an economy runs, and so on. Social media is easier because just involves getting into, for example, X, opening an account, same as TikTok or Facebook or any other platform that is popular. Then following up on should I say, the opinion makers and the drivers of these conversations, that would influence how you view governance, how you view law, how you view economics, and it would influence how someone expresses themselves in matters to do with governance and so on. But social media is easier than coming up with an app, coming up with a website, and so on.
Maura, I understand we have the freedom of speech, but to what extent can you say what you want online?
The limits on freedom of expression, because that's how it's denoted or quoted within the law, in fact, has to have an overarching effect on other people, because then why would you be expressing yourself to suit yourself? I mean, as I'm expressing myself, I should be able to actually affect the other person or the other group of persons. So to speak, that the limit should be, because not all rights are unlimited. There are those that can be limited, and freedom of expression is one of them. But the parameters through which that right can be limited is the observance of the effect of what happens when it is disseminated. So if I say, for instance, I don't like this space. Let me use this space. I don't like this space because I am an alumnus of the Catholic University, so I think I can say it. I really have an honest and a jovial feeling about this institution, but I'm using it as an example. I don't like this institution because it's a Catholic institution. That's my expression. It's an example, yeah? Just for the record. I see my very good dean and aunties here, so I have to qualify it. I have a right to say that expression because that is what I feel. Within the context and environment on the regime of human rights, you have to be able to take it out so that other people can understand what you're saying. And expression as a right, even though it can be limited, is something or is a right that is transient. It has to exist because then without the right to express yourself, then what society are we living in? Are we living in a cube? But because we don't live in a cube and in the progressive regime of the Kenyan 2010 Constitution and all other enabling legislations that surround that, then for instance, if I were to call you over the phone and say and insult you, then there is a regime of law that says, this is the Kenya Communication Amendment Act, that says it's a misuse of a telecommunication device, which now becomes a criminal offense. But there's another regime for it. I mean, there's another discussion for it. But you can see that the limitations, in fact, are extended to what is permissible by law. If I take my phone and probably I call the Inspector General of Police and I tell him or her that you are such a fool by allowing your police officers to shoot at innocent civilians. Of course, I have insulted him or her, and is it permissible within the law? It is an argument which is on a slippery slope because I have actually told him the truth on one end, let's say, or her, but on another end, I have actually injured their personality. Between me and them, they are offended, or he or she is offended. But is it permissible? My correct answer is yes, because the extent or the measure to which the limitation operates is to permit that to be said. Because on one end, there is an injury that is permanent. What is that injury? There are police officers who have killed innocent, peaceful protesters. And it's a fact. So when you say you express yourself, if you are not allowed to express yourself, then you could imagine the explosion that will come when everyone is now tired of bottling up whatever they are supposed to express themselves. So it is a right which, in my opinion, is extremely important in the social democratization of a nation. If you cannot speak, if you cannot express yourself, I was just laughing about it the other day that we were coming from a time when imagining the death of a president. Remember, imagination is partly transient expression. You are imagining, I'm imagining a nice lunch today. Now, imagining the death of a president was treasonous. I mean, like, how do you even prove that? So imagine that someone will imagine that you've imagined. So you see, the context of where we are right now in the progressive legal regime that we are is that you can actually say it. You don't imagine anymore. You can say it. I don't want to say it because, I mean, I also don't want to test it, but you can actually say it.
Right.
That which cannot be imagined, yes.
And perhaps, let's say someone actually does say it, and there are legal actions taken against them. How do you defend yourself when you're taken in front of a court?
There is a presumption, especially on the regime of expression, because then there is the offenses of libel and slander, defamation. But when you're a public officer and an officer of the caliber of His Excellency or the deputy president or a governor or a deputy governor and so on, there is an expectation that someone will take a jibe at you just for the office that you hold. So it is contextually permissible to actually say it. And no one will take you to court over that remark. And if they do, then they suffer that ridicule of trying to prosecute an expression, a right. When you say the office of the First Lady is illegal, they are withdrawing public funds and misusing public funds. I have said it here now. There is no context in which that can be illegal in any case because, one, it's true, but number two, there is a higher question of public funds that you're speaking to. It's a very sensitive and emotive area that in a diaphragm of constitutional truth must be said. I'm not saying that you can say anything, there are those who say anything. I mean, you see the bloggers, they say whatever they say. And I'm not saying that we can caution or limit that expression, but if you curtail that freedom, then you risk having a bottled, unexpressed emotions which can lead to something which is totally unexpected and something which cannot be predicted. And I mean, look an example in the Arab world where these expressions are actually extremely limited. There is no historical context like what happened in the Arab Spring. It happens and everyone shoots up and everyone is, I mean, revolutions start because of one gentleman in Algeria setting himself ablaze. Because of that singular act. And in fact, wasn't that an expression? It was. In a digital world. And it was shared across the globe and it sparked a revolution within the Arab world and ended in Egypt, went into the Middle East and ended in Egypt. I don't know if there is a better way, a better poetic way of making an expression than, you know, that self-immolation of a person, giving yourself as an ultimate sacrifice to express what you feel. Yeah.
As we've seen, platforms such as TikTok, X has contributed to so much in the way that people express themselves, but it comes with a lot of challenges. And Winnie, maybe if you can speak on data protection. What's actually there for someone's data to be protected? Someone is scared, might be scared that my information is out there, it's being tracked, I'm being watched. What are the outlines that are put in place for that?
Okay, thank you. We have the Data Protection Act in Kenya, which is a 2019 regulation. So as a natural person or as we in the data protection space, we say as a data subject, you have certain rights under the Data Protection Act, including right to information that an organization has about you. So if you feel that a certain organization has information about you and they've shared this information with, say, a government agency for them to track you, then you have a right to request that information to be given to you, and they need to tell you who they share this information with, and you also have a right to complain to the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. But what I've seen happening is most of these politicians are now weaponizing the Data Protection Act as well as the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, where you express yourself online and then you're targeted based on what you said. But then I don't understand why this is something that is happening. Yet the Data Protection Act is there to actually protect you as an individual and also safeguard your right to privacy and also promote other rights that you might have, including your right to freedom of expression, to express yourself, to say what you want to say about the organization without feeling scared. Will they come for me? Am I going to be next? What are they going to do about me? You know, and what will happen to my family? Such kind of things. So the Data Protection Act is a good place to start, as long as we do not weaponize it to go against the individuals that it is supposed to protect. For example, we saw the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner actually issuing a statement saying that the Salimia Yeye whatever campaign that was happening was against the rights of MPs to privacy. But then, where was the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner during electioneering period, where most of us received text messages telling us to vote for me for this and this position?
There's the issue of internet access as well. During the protests, we saw that spaces such as X were shut down. The internet was slow. How do you go about that? How can someone access the internet even when there's government censorship?
I think the issue of internet shutdowns has been there for the longest time. And especially in Africa, we've seen regimes trying to make sure that people do not express themselves online, because we can see the impact where now the protests are moving from online to the streets. So what I'd say would be the best place to start is have a VPN. So when you have VPN, it masks your IP address, so it is not very easy for them to track where you are. So that is one of the ways that you can do that. There's also communicating through encrypted technologies. For example, if you feel like when you're communicating on X, it is say a public platform, everyone knows what you're planning, what is the next step and all of that. Can we move this into a place where it is more I say closed, say there's end-to-end encryption. We can discuss issues there, say something like Telegram or Signal, such kind of spaces. The other thing I'd say is we maybe need to have a law in this country that speaks to accountability of these platforms, where these platforms can be able to protect individuals from the information being, say, shared, or from governments throttling the internet so that you don't share this information outside. So we need laws on that particular aspect. The other aspect I'd say is we need laws on the extent of surveillance that a company or a national government can have over you. Because as long as we do not have a law that limits national surveillance, if you can say that anything that the government does is in the public interest, is in national security, and we're not very specific on what this is, then it means that any information that you share, anything that you do online can actually be used by the government, arguing that it is for public interest or it is for national security.
Right. I think right now we can move to the audience, probably take 1-2 questions for any of our panelists. Anyone with the mic? Okay. I think we can continue the conversation, and then maybe towards the end. And we're also live on X. If there are if there's anyone who has any question on X and would like to pose it to any of our panelists, kindly you can take the mic as well. We have Farah on X. Yes, Farah, go ahead. Farah, you can introduce yourself and tell us who your question is to. I think Farah's having an issue with the connection, but I would like to move our conversation forward. Laura, people are very passionate today. Everyone is aware of what's happening. Kenyans are more informed more than ever. And maybe as a journalist, you can let us know, how can someone thread around misinformation, disinformation, so that they are not doing an injustice to themselves as well as their audience?
Unfortunately, there are no shortcuts when it comes to misinformation and disinformation. It's also a tool, just the way digital activism is a tool. Those who are opposed to your message actually come at you with misinformation and disinformation. And the only way to counter that actually is by educating yourself. So you do have, I guess, platforms of people like Linda Katiba, even the LSK. They're actually organizations that make it their business to give you correct information. And so the best way is to go look at this information, see what the truth is, compare it to what is being accused, and then you take it from there. I like what the gentleman said from LSK. Basically, libel and defamation, those are two things as a journalist you just have to learn, because anything that you report, which is the truth, has to fall under certain guidelines. So even when you start speaking on the different platforms, you have to be well informed so that what you're saying is the truth. And if you do see somebody who's misinforming others, and we've seen it happening a lot, especially on the X platform, you can actually go against them and say, hey, these are the facts, what you're saying is a lie. That's the best way to counter disinformation. But then you also have to be really keen. I mean, now, of course, you have people juxtaposing pictures on other pictures, putting audio where it wasn't there before. So if you do play around with those kind of technologies, then you're able to see some of the things that are truth and some of the things that are not true. So you do have to do your homework. When you look at something on social platforms, you have to actually investigate it a bit thoroughly, because even an announcement from State House saying the president is speaking at 2 p.m., you could have disinformation about that as well. So you just have to have your eyes open, look at the information that you're consuming very keenly, and anytime you see somebody misinforming or disinforming others, then you need to counter it, even just as a responsible citizen.
I hear we have a participant on X by the name Esther. Esther, kindly introduce yourself and let us know what your question is and to who. I think there's an internet problem with the X space. However, we can continue with our conversation. James, as we can see right now, people are very passionate online and they want to advocate for their rights, they want to speak their mind, but there's a sense of people questioning their sincerity and authenticity. They're like, are you even really doing this for yourself, or there's another interest involved? How have you, as a digital activist, managed to stay on your ground throughout the years for what you stand for, and how can someone at home, what can they take away from what you've practiced?
I think I would say that virtue is hard to come by, and that we've seen in the years before, politicians and some activists take advantage, actually they are opportunists, take advantage of, say, social agitation to benefit from it. So if you genuinely want this from the heart, I guess virtue can be taught, but then it has to come from inside you. You have to push it, you have to want it, it has to be authentic, and it has to be from you. Do it not for the love of money, do it not for the love of favors or whatever benefits some NGOs are giving out there, because there are NGOs out there and civil societies that are paying out activists, and it has happened before and it is still happening even now.
There was also this conversation this morning that you can be a digital activist, but you also need funding. I mean, where is that person, I don't know, supposed to buy certain items to even go out there and protest? What's your opinion on that? I think this can go towards my entire panel. You can start, James.
Well, I would agree to a certain level. You need funds for activism, for example, for placards, for banners, for their flyers, and sometimes goes to fare and maybe lunch. But it is possible to still have activism without all that funding. Actually, most of what has happened in the past few months for the Gen Z protests have actually not received a lot of funding from out there as some people think. Some of us have been contributing our own money to print T-shirts, to print placards, to print banners, to print posters. It's possible to not receive funding, but still do authentic activism.
We need the same question.
For me, I'd say there's a place for funding, but how I'd phrase it is this way. If we are going to fund, we can fund within ourselves, within the movement, the same way we've done Mchanga to contribute to the hospital bills, the way we had Kenyans for Kenya. Such kind of initiatives can be a form of funding for such kind of movements. We don't have to rely on other third parties to fund the movements.
Maura?
The ultimate test in resource mobilization for any organization is the purpose to which the resources are being allocated for. And you see, the main question around whatever topical issue we are discussing is the influence of third-party, transnational or trans-international players who sponsor local and domestic activities for purposes of a larger global sphere. So the question that we ought to ask ourselves is the extent to which the state can actually support such movements, because it is a guarantee and a right. And then with each right means there's an obligation on someone. So instead of just giving you a notice that we want to peacefully picket and demonstrate, we are also writing to Treasury that we need an allocation of, say, 10 million Kenya shillings to buy T-shirts, as my brother is saying, because it is within the diaphragm of a democratic space. If you cannot mobilize, for instance, if you can't do Mchanga or you can't do what is happening right now in terms of the pay bill numbers and the normative collection methods, then there has to be a legal way to address it, because the law in itself is not a vacuum, and the constitutive Article 37 is not like a platitude, a mere, oh, by the way, we have some ink left, let's just write Article 37. It has a meaningful purpose, and the purpose has a historical context. So when we are talking about resource mobilization or funding, let's not be embarrassed about it. Let's engage openly and say, yes, we can't go for maandamano if you don't have water. You can't go for maandamano if you don't have a face mask. Now we've learned you can't go for maandamano if you don't have, say, protective gear. Maybe we'll get to a point where we say, and this is normative constitutional discourse, that we actually need to invest in firearms, in flak jackets. Because, all you are left with is a phone and a stone, and someone is carrying a live ammunition, which, by the way, and this is very important, many independent observers are saying, even the ammunition that is being used is not traceable, is not something which is within a register that you can say, in the morning you left with firearm, serial number, blah, 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 with 47 rounds of ammunition. No, they cannot be traced. So it is a conversation that we must be able to talk about honestly, that, hey, look here, we need funds, not funds from, say, Ford Foundation, so to speak, or, the comical aspect of Tumetenga, 10 million Tumetenga. It's an honest conversation about a people-driven agenda, a people's-driven movement that actually requires serious funding. And this funding, in my opinion, does not necessarily have to come from within the movement. It can come from without, and especially government should be able to account for that resource mobilization, because it's the constitutional off button. You are switching off the system to switch it on again for a rebirth.
I think I agree to a certain extent. The biggest thing, though, is when it comes to funding, there has to be a way for it to be above reproach. So if you're getting funding, you should be able to say, this is how much we've gotten from here, so that it's not hiding as much as now that we can't trace the bullets even. But if you're open enough and say, okay, this is what we've received and this is what we're going to use it for. What has happened now, though, it's been good because just Kenyans collectively have been helping one another. Somebody brings water, somebody brings some Colgate that you put under your eyes, but there has to be some form of accountability. This is where it came from. There's even a lady whose kids wanted to join the protest at some point. It's like, you can't join me, but how you can help, just write this placard here, write what we're going to say on the streets. And that's their form of contribution to, letting themselves be expressed online on the streets. And as long as there's accountability, then I think funding should be an option. We have political parties being funded for their campaigns by the government. So why can't these activists be funded?
Final question. I think we'll make it short since we're headed to the next segment. But what trends do you foresee in the digital space moving forward? How can Kenyans use technology to not only speak their mind, but fight for their rights? Laura?
I think social media right now should be used as a tool of education, because you do have Good Samaritans putting all this information down, and we do not have an excuse as Kenyans not to be informed about what our rights are. So even when you are arrested by police, when you speak your rights, then they're also taken aback because they don't expect you to know. And I think civil education has been a big problem because we've always followed, going for the barazas in the different counties, going to talk to, people in the city halls. But then social media is such a powerful platform to be able to push civic education in the way that hasn't been there before. So I think going forward, it's going to be a tool for all the information that is needed. Like even right now, with some of the CSs being called back, you do have that opportunity to express your displeasure or your pleasure. But the fact that you know your rights now is the most important thing when it comes to the future of tech, when it comes to digital activism.
James?
I think I would agree with what she has said, that this here is a public participation. And it was not so prevalent in some years ago. And we are going to have more of this all through the country. And I have seen, there's a gentleman called Galmadido too. I think he does his stuff on TikTok, goes and talks to citizens, then broadcasts it, I think records it, then posts it on his TikTok account. I think we will have more Kenyans doing that. We'll have more Kenyans engaging in citizen assemblies all over the country. We are going to decentralize this to the 47 counties and to all sub-counties. And I think it's about time we start thinking about probably using, for example, blockchain in our election system. if we had a blockchain technology conduct our elections, we would have maybe more verifiable elections in the future. An election where you can actually confirm without doubt that this guy got this amount of votes, this particular MP got this amount of votes, and so on. You can actually trace the rejected votes and so on.
Winnie?
For me, I'd say this is a space that is growing, and I think it would continue to grow into the future. I mean, right now we are seeing technologies that allow us to even search our members of parliament, what are the kind of corruption things they've been involved in. So the moment you're able to document these things, we can always come back and ensure that these people are accountable to us in the future. And also such forums like this, I'm sure they're going to continue into the future, where we have such kind of discussions that are affecting the nation and how best can we as citizens put our government to account.
Maura, final sentiment?
I believe that where we are heading to in terms of a global citizenry is that we will be able to use technology to even predict certain political outcomes. And with this, I mean, for instance, we could have technology that is AI-driven that will even predict grand corruption, will even predict effective use of public resources, will even predict certain outcomes in terms of budgetary processes that would be able to quickly make it easy or digestible to the larger public, so that these technologies will be used to assess, as my sister is saying, to assess and measure effectiveness of government. For instance, if a particular road was, set aside, some funds were set aside for its development, then it will be easier to use technology to measure whether there was effective use of public resources, and also to forecast a predictable way in which the political consciousness can be used. For instance, sadly to say that we have a vivid memory of what happened, say, in 1991, 1992, what happened in 1997, we forgetting what happened in 2007, and there were small skirmishes in 2013, now culminating to 2017. But you see, when you have backup of technology, unlike the human mind that is susceptible to emotional healing, technologies don't have that form of therapeutic comfort, so that you can use the same technology, in fact, to heal yourself politically by constantly reminding you of where you are supposed to be heading to. And we are seeing this. In fact, you've even given a better example. There are guys on X right now who cannot speak, or they are unable to speak. And that in itself is a barrier of what we are talking about. And the panel itself is on, technological activism. We have guys who cannot express themselves in a topical issue that is so relevant to what we are saying. We will not be able to have members of parliament who just, for the sake of it, insult the consciousness of those who voted or those who employed them, and then use the same law to say that they are protected areas, you cannot come to parliament. It's a relationship like a bank and the customer. Between my bank and myself, I am the creditor, the bank is the debtor. It's not the other way around. The member of parliament or the elected representative cannot be the employer. The employer is the voter. So I've never seen a rather comical issue that there can be a problem when your employer comes to your place of work to say hi. I mean, it's a simple issue. It's a human resource issue. The voters went to say hi to the employees. So anyway, I may be sidestepping. But
Thank you, Maura. I wouldn't want to be the person that stands between you and your lunch. However, we have an artist in the room with us. Oh, we have one question. All right. The mic.
we will hear. Yes.
All right. Kindly let someone bring you the mic so that, yes, also our viewers at home can listen. Go for it.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. As we get onto this digital space, activism, education, etc., do bodies like NCIC still have a role? And if they don't, do we have any more justification to keep funding them out of public resources? So,
I think that question is towards Maura.
yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I believe that even our historical context in why we have such constitutionally mandated bodies is for purposes of addressing a political as well as a social underpinning context that we find ourselves as a people. I don't want to say as a country, but as a people. As recent as 2 weeks ago, the legislator from, anyway, I know his name, Farah Maalim, for purposes of this context, I do not want to use the prefix Honorable Farah Maalim because there is no honor in that. It is important that they dig in more into the claw so that they can have the legitimacy and the purpose of why they are established. And this goes to all other oversight authorities, that the legal framework is there, but the goodwill may be lacking. And I agree with you, there is a larger call on why public resources are utilized and continue to fund them when they are ineffectively not doing what they ought to do. For instance, if you look at IPOA, and this is something that we must speak about, they have a statutory duty. In fact, as they sit as a board, one of their members is the Inspector General, one of their board members is the Inspector General of Police. The Inspector General of Police has a statutory mandate to report any human rights abuse that happens under the hands of the police. I am telling you with a lot of confidence that until now, there has never been any time that the Inspector General of Police has ever reported to the board of IPOA that a Kenyan has been killed by a police officer, as ridiculous as it sounds. Because we all know that Kenyans are not dying because of bullets from Al-Shabaab or God knows Mau Mau.
Yeah.
I mean, they are dying because of the National Police Service. And when we changed that name from the National, when we changed it from it used to be called the Kenya Police Force, the force was changed for a reason, not because of constitutional glossing, but it is now a service, utumishi. Same as for the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. Its mandate is to actually enforce that as a Kenyan people, we live within the harmony and the cohesion of a society, a people that is driven towards harnessing humanity and development. So I agree with you, in fact, to that conclusion where you say if they are not serving the mandate, then if we remove it, then we'll be left with a vacuum where politicians used to say madoa doa, they would go and say wale watu wa uko, which, I mean, like for instance, the Gen Z, and I'm not saying in the context of what we are doing, but in another future, these guys do not look at each other as, they look at each other as, the concept of being a human being first, not the concept of being light-skinned, the concept of having curly hair, the concept of having big eyes or small noses, like me, broad bodies.
Maura, I think, yes. We have one more question on X so that we wrap up. Esther, kindly go ahead with your question.
The concept of having big eyes or small noses, like me, broad bodies.
Maura, I think, yes. We have one more question on X so that we wrap up. Esther, kindly go ahead with your question.
Can you hear me?
We have one more question on X so that we wrap up. Esther, kindly go ahead with your question.
Hello, can you hear me, please?
Loud and clear.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Esther.
Thank you very much. My question is, I mentioned the travel budget for the president last year, which was 18 billion, can cover a lot
Yes,
of
go ahead, Esther.
Sorry. Thank you very much. I mentioned earlier in this case that the 18 billion shillings that the president spent on travel last year can cover all the health and education sectors that have been cut off from the last year's budget and this year's budget. Things like the feeding program, the JSS teachers, Afia, Linda Mama, matters pertaining to health and education that have been cut off from our budget, and we are being convinced that the country is too broke to fund. Yet we can fund an 18 billion travel plan for the president in 1 year. My question is to the Law Society. Because education and health is a constitution guarantee, is guaranteed by the Constitution, can we go to court and challenge this budget? The deputy president had a 1.8 billion budget for luxury items. There's a confidential expenditure that is almost $1 billion as well in the office of the president. There's the 18 billion for the president alone to travel. There's money, but it's going to luxury, travel, renovations, things that really don't matter, the spouses' offices, things that do not matter and that are not enshrined in the Constitution. Education and health is enshrined, and I want us to find a way to challenge these constitutional malpractices that we are seeing in this government.
We had a hard time hearing Esther's question fully, but I think it was towards Maura, and I think she needs clarification on the Constitution and the limitations of freedom of speech. Kindly make it short.
The Constitution?
Yes, Esther was asking on the Constitution and the freedom of speech. What are the limitations that are there when it comes to digital activism?
And I think we had discussed this earlier on, but I think we can take it a notch higher. As a segmented right, the right to expression can be limited, and it can be limited within a legal framework. There are many regimes of law that limit the right to expression. You will realize that expression cannot only be verbal or textual. That's not the only. For instance, if I mock you, like I just take out my tongue out and, like, it's an expression. If I, do a signage, it's also an expression. So the limitation of the right to expression is dependent on where it is heading. For instance, there are some insignia that have been globally designated as being contrary to humanity. For instance, the swastika. It is an expression. As we are currently heading, and sorry to use this example, I know even my aunt is here, but the use of the middle finger has now found itself politically to be permissible. It is no longer offensive. In fact, it is an expression that is used even within political circles as an expression of dissatisfaction. I'm telling you progressively, yes. You look shocked.
Are you sure?
you look shocked. Yes. It is no longer offensive. To some it is, but it is no longer offensive. It is progressive. So nonetheless, you see even the slippery slope that the freedom of expression is, even to our own panel, is that we are disagreeing on it. But I felt as though we agreed on it when I said about the swastika. Everyone was, swastika is bad.
Right.
I mean, 6 million people died over that thing. That thing is not good. But when I expressed it in a different way, there was disagreement. So that even that test is not an objective one. It is a subjective one, depending on the applicability and usability of the expression itself. If I wink at you, some people take offense. Some find it as a gesture of flattery maybe. Some find it as a gesture of acknowledgement, like, that guy, whatever that guy said is good. But to certain quarters, it is not permissible as being, even the LGBTQ agenda and their signage, maybe and it's an expression. It is an expression. And you see expression.
Maura, I hate to cut you short.
You
yes,
should. You
but
should.
the conversation is continuing on X, and my name is Rukia Bule. From here on, I want to invite an artist whose song for the last 1 month has been trending everywhere. Can anyone guess?
Yes.
Go ahead. Anguka Nayo. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone stand on your feet. Allow us to welcome Wadaglis to the stage. Don't be scared to break a little sweat. I'll be in the backstage doing the same. Thank you to my panelists.
Hello, DJ.
You want to dance?
Check.
Okay. All right.
Shaskia. Nachoshaskia. Nachoshaskia. Check it. Hello.
Nachoshaskia. Wadaglis.
Check it. Well. Check.
Nachoshaskia tukiingia ni kublast. Huko ngabado unachukuliwa madam, so anguka nayo itabaki meflow na vibe, ati anguka nayo koko single for now. Mdaki mteja patikani hadi late night saa 6 ndo taniwai nikupin location na nkofana na hii sukate call niko chombaya ji mimi najua utakuwa ilizo release hata nikushow kwanza form ya didon nishashika mpoa na twende chini kwa chini akiwa hadi na mini sasa tunasikiza Shin City tuna feel free take a video na post pale NGC jina ni Kantel Kurapsi ni talent anguka nayo anguka nayo anguka nayo twende down low now stand up to your feet mikono juu alafu click tuliza pesa alafu one leg anguka nayo one leg
Anguka nayo. Check it. Anguka nayo. Anguka nayo. Anguka nayo. Anguka nayo kama uko na new cast. Anguka nayo kona pati na magwata. Anguka nayo round 2 kwa iba. Anguka nayo anguka nayo anguka nayo. Anguka nayo. Check it. Anguka nayo. Anguka nayo. Na katika mtuko ebanduka cheza chini ukikonezo maduta anguka nayo baby girl ushaitika mdagi matisho za wadaki babe ama dali stambu serikali tuni serikali tamka asali simna joni nani flow ni shati ki kumbe duwa awedani chi awo
mutekiwa poa deli mi ti mana zogo
anguka nayo
anguka nayo
anguka nayo
anguka nayo msuku anguka nayo kama uko na new cut anguka nayo kona pati na magwasha anguka nayo round 2 kwa ibasha
anguka nayo check it anguka nayo
anguka nayo
check it anguka nayo kama uko na new cut anguka nayo kona pati na magwasha anguka nayo round 2 kwa ibasha anguka nayo anguka nayo Hello. Check it. Nachoshaskia. Nachoshaskia. Ni wadaglis. Hello.
Nachoshaskia wadaglis.
Check it.
Nachoshaskia tukiingia ni kublast huko ngabado unachukuliwa madam, so anguka nayo itabaki meflow na vibe anguka nayo koko single for now mdagi mteja patikani hadi night saa 6 ndo taniwai nikupin location na nkofana na hii sukate call niko chombaya ji mimi najua utakuwa
ilizo release
hata nikushow kwanza form ya didon nishashika mpoa na twende chini kwa chini akiwa hadi na mini sasa tunasikiza Shin City tuna feel free take a video na post pale NGC jina ni Kantel Kurapsi ni talent anguka nayo
check it anguka nayo twende down low now stand up on your feet mikono juu alafu click
tuliza pesa alafu one leg
anguka nayo one leg anguka nayo check it anguka nayo anguka nayo. Cheki, anguka nayo.
Ati anguka nayo.
Cheki, anguka nayo kama uko na new cut.
Ati
Anguka nayo kona pati na magwash. Anguka nayo round 2 kwa hii bus. Anguka nayo ati, anguka nayo ati, anguka nayo. Anguka nayo. Cheki, anguka nayo. Anguka nayo.
na katika msupa webanjuka, cheza chini ukikondezo maduta, anguka nayo baby girl ushaitika, mdagi matisho za wadagi babe, ama dali, sambu serikali, juli serikali, tamka asali, simnajua ni nani, flow ni shaki, umetuwa awa down chi,
Wewe
deli mi, ti,
mana hu,
mana zogo,
cheki, anguka nayo. Anguka nayo. Anguka nayo. Anguka nayo. Cheki,
anguka nayo kama kona,
alo.
anguka nayo kama kona new cut, anguka.
Nachomshasikia. Nachomshasikia.
Check. Anguka nayo tabaki umeflow na vibe. Anguka nayo koko single for now. Mdagi mteja patikani. Hadi late night saa 6 ndo tani wai. Nikupin location nakofana na hii. Sukate call niko chombaya ji. Mimi najua utakuwa irizo release. Hata nikushow kwanza form ya didon. Nishashika mpoa na twende chini kwa chini akiwa hadi na mini. Sasa tunasikiza Shin City tuna feel free. Take a video na post pale NGC. Jina ni Cantel
Kurapsi ni talent. Anguka nayo. Cheki, anguka nayo. Cheki, anguka nayo, twende down low now. Stand up for your feet, mikono juu alafu click. Tuliza pesa alafu one leg. Anguka nayo, one leg. Anguka nayo. Anguka nayo. Cheki, anguka nayo. Anguka nayo.
anguka nayo kama kona niuka, anguka nayo kona pati na magwasha, anguka nayo round 2 kwa ibasha, anguka nayo ati, anguka nayo ati,
Anguka nayo. Anguka nayo. Anguka nayo. Anguka nayo.
na katika msupa webanjuka, cheza chini ukikondezo maduta, anguka nayo baby girl ushaitika, mdagi matisho za wadagi babe, ama dali, sambu serikali, juli serikali, tamka asali, simnajua ni nani, flow ni shaki, ndo nimedunga hapo down ni chi, mutekiwa poa deli mi, ti,
Mana hu, mana zogo. Cheki, anguka nayo.
anguka nayo kona pati na magwasha, anguka nayo round 2 kwa iba, anguka nayo. Anguka nayo.
Hello. Okay, sasa unaona sasa ile signal ulikuwa umesema ya house bado pia juu inakuja, naona kama sina haja nayo saa hii, naweza i-mute, nita-unmute wakati ule unatuma signal zote. So, unaona sasa inakuja mara mbili. Sasa inakuja mpaka kwa ile channel ile ilikuwa umenitumia mix yako. Sasa nilikuwa naona ni baki tu na hii tumeweka kwa channel 7. Ni mute hii imekuja kwa mix yako. But wakati unaweza kuwa unacheza kitu wewe, ndio nitafungulia hiyo mix. So tatu work tu na channel 7. Sasa mimi naiona iko sawa. Niko poa kabisa. Very good.
the front seats. Those who are seated at the back, for uniformity purposes, I kindly request you to come and occupy the seats in the front, please. Kindly. Those who are the back seats, I do request that you kindly come and occupy the seats at the front so that we can begin the next session in a few minutes. Thank you. Please come, kindly. Please. That we have a uniform session, and kindly request those who are seated at the back to please move to the front seats. Thank you, patriots. Keep moving the front seats. Those who are at the back, please, on the other side. Tafadhali. Njooni kwenye viti hivi ambavyo viko mbele hapa, alafu tuweze kuanza mjadala ujao kwa muda usio mwingi. Keep coming to these front seats. I can still see some of us on the other side. So please, just to make our work easier, kindly, please occupy the rest of the seats. So thank you. DJ, please, you can carry on. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Muko poa? Muko wazima? Nimefurahi kuwaona. Thank you so much. This is a great pleasure to be here. The Citizen Assembly is a forum where we exchange ideas and subject our thoughts to critical analysis in order to better our governance model. That's why you are all here today since morning, and I want to thank you for being part and parcel of this congregation here today, which is historic in many ways, since it's also a reflection of how young Kenyans are taking part in the governance of their country. Their main, of course, objective being holding their leaders to account, and that is in the quest for good governance and to have better service delivery, for since you are a critical party to our country. My name is Ayub Abdikadir. I'll be moderating the next session, which will be touching on the impact of citizen journalism in the contemporary Kenya and contemporary times, to be specific, because Kenya is just a representation of the community of nations across the world, the impact this has had in terms of Kenyans leveraging on technology to air out their grievances, make their voices heard, demanding accountability from their governments, both at the national and at the county level. And your presence thus here is important and key, and I want to thank you for the patience you have expressed since morning in bracing the cold weather here in the county of Nairobi. I'll be moderating the next session, which will be made by 4 fellow Kenyans, and I want to call them onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause for Jacob Mkuri, who represents the Media Council of Kenya. Jacob, may you walk to the stage? As he takes his seat, also with us will be William Okech. He is from the Media Complaints and the Chairperson Emeritus with us here. Also with us is Collins Masharia from the Grassroots and Community-Based Journalists. Also with us will be Joshua Okayo, who is the President of the KSL, that is the Kenya School of Law. So this conversation has been online since morning, ladies and gentlemen, where those who were not able to be present here today have been equally making their voices heard on the online platform on X, and that is the essence of using and leveraging on technology in the hearing of the grievances as expressed by Kenyans, and how this is unprecedented given the events of the last 1 month, the past 35 days, which were historic in many aspects. So therefore, we'll be focusing on this and how it's important, how it's significant, given many Kenyans who are able to access the internet, and its importance, how it can better our governance, how it can hold the leaders to account, how it can make our country better in terms of governance, because that is the demand that you Kenyans have in wanting proper services from your government. At any given time, there is a government. There can never be a vacuum at any given time. Getting healthcare, getting education, proper infrastructure, and can that be achieved with the pressure that comes with citizen journalism that you can all express, which delinks the mainstream media or the traditional media where we as professionals practice, and therefore that power at some point given or handed over to you in leveraging on technology in holding your leaders to account and airing out your grievances. So we'll be hearing from the panel of 4 here with us, and later we'll be taking the question and answer session, the plenary, where we'll be having the roving microphone. We equally want to field questions from you where you want clarity on, where you want specification on. There are experienced personnel here who will be able to talk to you about that in getting the answers which you deem right, which you have been crying for, yearning for from your government. And I thank you so much, gentlemen, much appreciated for your presence. Jacob, starting with you first, given the circumstances we are in at the moment, do you think citizen journalism is a perfect platform and an opportunity to demand for accountability and good governance from the administration of the day?
All right. Good afternoon, and maybe just a clarification. My name is Jacob Nyukuri, not Mkuria, but pleased to be here. And just to your question about citizen journalism, and I'll beg to differ with the definition of the citizen journalism, because again, we don't have citizen journalism. We just have journalists who perform that duty, and we have digital content creators who are able to use the space that they have to articulate issues and be able to address an issue or hold the government to account. Mm-hmm. So just from the beginning, there's that need for us to differentiate between a trained journalist and a citizen, or someone who has a digital platform or space where they can be able to use that and articulate the issues. And whether that, again, is being used to hold the government to account, yes. We've seen a lot of content coming from the general public that is being again picked by the mainstream media and being aired, and that again helps the space, people having to express themselves and being able to help others understand what is happening in the day. So both the media, I'll say, and the public has played a big role to holding all leaders to account and even government to account.
But then where do you draw the line in terms of the framework that confines mainstream professional journalists and a citizen journalist, let me say, who has access to the internet, has a smartphone, can X, can Facebook, can put the information on other platforms with no regard for timeliness and the ethics that do govern the profession largely, if you look at the mainstream side of issues. Therefore, where do you draw the line that appears to be very thin in the eyes of many media practitioners?
For me, I look at it because a journalist, and Ayub, you're a trained journalist, you're accredited by the Media Council of Kenya, and by that, it means that you have a responsibility and you are held accountable by the Code of Conduct for the Practice of Journalism, in that your work, in whatever you're doing it professionally. And that, again, gives you the powers to do whatever you want to do. But for a person who just has a phone and has access to internet and can open up a WhatsApp or a Facebook page, again, they can do that. But you, who is a journalist, a trained one, you have a responsibility to ensure that whatever content you're sharing is credible, is fact-checked, it's researched well, as opposed to anybody who was just a phone. Because we've seen in the past, and even during the protests, people just picking content and sharing it, whether in total disregard of whether that info is factual or not. And that, again, becomes a problem. That was differentiates between a journalist and someone who's just using their phone and to create content and share it.
Yeah, which, again, brings us to the question of credibility and verifiability aspect. Mr. Macharia, given that you work with the grassroots mobilizers and young Kenyans appear to be now shifting attention away from the traditional media to now leveraging on the internet and citizen journalism, how has this played a key role in getting your voices heard, especially from an experienced point of view?
So, what I can say is that personally, so what I can say is that personally, that term citizen journalism is a very broad word, because personally, I'm a journalist who has gone through training from Aga Khan University, Africa Check for fact-checking. Understand, I've been given grants by Media Council of Kenya, and necessarily I've not gone for a diploma somewhere, yeah? It all took from a passion perspective, I was passionate about storytelling, I was passionate about articulating issues of the people of the community. And how it has played a role is that by me being able to articulate these voices, because the mainstream, we have very few mainstream medias in this country, if you look at it, yeah? Some are even firing people. People don't have that capacity. But when you are trained as a citizen journalist, as you are trained as a community media journalist, you're able to articulate the voices of those people who the mainstream cannot be able to cover, because the mainstream cannot be able to cover everybody, you understand? But people have a voice. They want to be be heard. People want to be able to articulate their voices. But what the challenges comes in when now people who are not trained on how to be able to differentiate between this particular, what is real and what is fake. That's why I told you, like, I had to go through a training from the Africa Check on fact checking. I had to go to a training to Aga Khan University on mobile journalism, because that is the tool that people are using to create their voices. It's very easy right now to just take a phone, do a selfie, and just talk about propaganda or anything that you don't understand. Yeah, but with these particular tools, people can be able to they can use them for positivity. And with these people who are trained and who are trained, like what the Media Council does, yeah, training people and getting to people to be able to be aware of what is fake and what is real, can really be able to help, and it is able to amplify so many people's voices, because people have a lot to gather from. You know, when you have a lot of information, you can be able to pick what is true and what is fake. Not the way that the government wanted to control the media, the mainstream media, by saying, you know, you should not be able to cover this, you know, should not be able to cover this. This gives citizen a one perspective view. You know, you just have one perspective, and that is what you judge from. But with these particular tools and all these, it can be able to pick from various places and be able to come with your own judgment and on what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah. And then how about then sieving the information before you get it out?
Yeah.
And this is, as you have said, to loosen the government's grip on what the public sees, hears, and reads. But if you have 10 people and they are all putting out information on online platforms, then how about the trustworthiness, one, two, verifiability, and then three, the question of trust and credibility that comes with the mainstream traditional media. How can that be factored in, even as you want to put out that information out?
Well, people right now are using mainstream as a verification tool. They are not necessarily using it to get to get information. You know, they are just using it as a verification, because even before the news goes to the mainstream, people have already known about it. Yeah, they just want to verify that it happened. Yeah, you understand. But with the basics of having so much information, the beauty is there. Having so much information, not being restricted to the information, because having that information gives you that intellect to be able to decide on what I want and what I don't want. And that's where now accountability comes in. You can be able to hold your leaders accountable, because now I can be able to follow on. You understand? I saw you when you are poor as an MP. How come now you have become a member of parliament? Now I see you throwing in the car. You understand? And that's now where the beauty comes in, that you can be able to follow on. And that's what now, when you talk about the line between for verification, is that do your research, follow on. Do your research. Don't make your judgment out of one maybe video or one particular information that you get. And that's what I'm saying. The beauty is there in having a lot of information that you can be able to analyze and be able to come with a conclusion of your own decision.
Okay, William. Yes. The common word here, and which appears to be the theme, is information that the public wants. They want to know what's happening. They want to know how their money is spent. They want to know how their government is undertaking its responsibilities as the Constitution prescribes. But mobile journalism or citizen journalism is, in many aspects, a double-edged sword, is it?
Yes, certainly it is. And of course, just riding on the comments of my fellow panelists, it will be very important, not just for us, but also for the congregation, to specifically know how to distinguish between what has in theory been called citizen journalist and the formal journalist. Well, you'll first need to ask yourself, who is a journalist? A journalist is someone who gathers news, collects news, sorts them, categorizes them, and thereafter distributes this news. And it is news which is of value, touching on different things. It could be news touching on entertainment, education, informational. That is what a journalist does. Then the distinction now between a citizen journalist and the formal trained journalist is that whereas formal trained journalists, one, they subscribe to a code of ethics. Here in Kenya, we have it under the Media Council Act. That is a code of conduct for the practice of journalism. And then also, the trained journalists, they also associate with a media establishment, a media enterprise. That is what they associate with. Unlike a citizen journalist who is just a citizen, who is in possession of a digital tool, has access to internet, and they can be able to gather news, to share that news. So then, just as you have stated that it is a double-edged sword, the benefit is that whereas a citizen journalist, it has broadened the sphere of freedom of expression, because the Constitution under Article 33 grants all citizens the right to share ideas, to populate ideas, but then there's a rider. So long as you do not offend certain principles, one of them being hate speech, propaganda for war, ethnic incitement, those are the boundaries that one should not go against. So the sword will come in the sense that if you're a citizen journalist, whereas it will be very good that you share this information, you distribute it, you need to be cautious. Because the Constitution, as much as that right is given, the same Constitution also mandates us all citizens to also respect the privacy and the rights of other people. Okay. So if you're a citizen journalist, bloggers, for instance, if there's a matter that you really feel that it is of public interest, and of course public interest is where it touches on the welfare of the wananchi. If it's a matter of public revenue, if it's a matter of public expenditure, then that is a matter of public interest. Then you can be able to expose it. And it's normally a thin line, and that's where, and I agree with my colleague here, training will be very important. Because training will help both categories of journalists to know, how do I distinguish? What is the private life? For example, one debate that has always been there, if you are a public servant, a very good example is the Olympic sports. You are a public servant, you are the CS, you've been told that to choose a delegation to represent Kenya and its athletes in that specific sports. Then among that delegation, probably you have taken a relative, you have taken maybe a girlfriend who does not qualify to be there. Then of course, as much as this is a CS who is doing this, there's a distinction. As a public servant, they have a higher obligation to leadership and integrity. So if you're a blogger, you'll be very, very much protected if you blow or you expose such an exposure. He's using taxpayers' money. He's put people who ought not to be on that trip, yet there could be some other athletes who have been left behind. So of course, our constitution and the laws which are there protects every citizen. You can disseminate information, you can blog, yes. And you'll even realize that citizen journalists have been the people behind most of the major events in the world. When you look at the tsunami that happened in Aceh, Indonesia, the mainstream media had to rely on the first footage of citizen journalists. Mm-hmm. Even when you look at Egypt, the revolution, citizen journalists played a very critical role. So as much as the right is there, we can be citizen journalists, all of us here, but we need to be cautious. What does the Constitution say? We can distribute any information, but let us protect and respect the right of other people. Let us not propagate ethnic incitement.
Responsibility.
Yes.
That comes with that exercise of the right that the Constitution does enshrine. Joshua, do you think that with the media freedom that we have in our country, given the vast array of institutions that were born out of Katiba 2010, ever since its promulgation, and an environment that appears or is free more than the previous regimes that we have had, and the internet now coming up of age, the advent of applications that are so fast in the dissemination of information, do you think one complements the other, and is it a cause for good governance, a platform upon which the Kenyan people can hold their government to account?
Thank you, Ayub, and good evening, friends. Let me start by saying that I associate myself with what my fellow panelists have said. But to come to your question, maybe I start by a story. 3 weeks ago, when I went missing, and I just notified 2 people in my contacts whom I could reach very easily at that time. And then I could not be reached again. These 2 people went and reported to other people, reported to my counsel at the Kenya School of Law, and then the counsel picked it up, and they started amplifying the fact that I was in distress at some point, and then I could not be reached at that time. And they shared that information, and they started a hashtag that whoever was holding me to free me, at that point, then they thought that it would be better to have a presser. That is when they reached out to, the mainstream media to come forward and also be part of this amplification. So, look, the long and short of it is that, yes, citizen journalism and mainstream, or rather trained journalism, they complement one another, each other, in the sense that, Ayub, we cannot have citizen TV or nation media TV reporters everywhere in this country. We cannot have radio reporters everywhere. There are certain things that happen every day, and the mainstream media gets to know through clips that have been recorded using people's phones. We've had people being reported missing. The mainstream media gets this information from, say, X or Facebook or wherever it is. So again, it's the fact that the mainstream media has does not have the longest hands to cover everywhere. But it is through these people who are untrained, the citizen journalists, that they get to get their part of their story. Of course, we have stories where the mainstream media are called for pressers, and they are told, this is the thing, let us communicate. But at the same time, there are things that they cannot get in touch with. Again, I think the previous speaker has spoken to the rights granted in the Constitution, and of course, the institutions surrounding access to information and freedom of media. It is important that to note that citizen journalists really do not report authoritatively. But in most cases, I've seen people just recording what they've seen in real time, and they post that without commentating, without doing anything. They just record what we can see. I think for me, that is a very good beginning point for citizen journalism. Just record what you know, what you've seen, and what can be of interest to the general public, and let it out there. Now, whoever has the right training, whoever knows the ethics surrounding reporting and journalism now can pick it up, dig into the story, get what is happening, and then report authoritatively. So I think in another way, it's just a matter of people complementing one another and trying to fix in where the other can't reach. Because at the same time, there are those of us, and a majority of Kenyans who do not have access to smartphones. Yeah. So that means they are not on TikTok, they are not on X, they are not on Facebook or wherever. These people listen to radios. These people watch local TV stations. That is where they get the information. So again, just with the citizen journalism or with the digital journalism, we cannot get to reach everyone, especially in matters of national importance, like what we've seen in the past 3-4 weeks. So we also have to get the mainstream media have its space, so that we consider those that cannot get in touch with the digital journalism.
Jacob, given the events that surrounded 18th June 25th and thereafter, which led to sudden turn of events, including the dismissal of the cabinet and the president making major decisions, and this largely out of the protests that had leveraged on the internet, young Kenyans born 97s and afterwards who had gathered their energy in calling for accountability from the government. I mean, we are not in the space where the Arab Spring was in 2010, because the event which happened in Tahrir Square, which saw out Mubarak after more than 30 years in power in Egypt, Zain Abidin Ben Ali in Tunisia, where it all began with Mohamed Bouazizi setting himself on fire, and spreading to Libya and largely to the Arab world, still active in some parts of Syria. We are not there because the Kenyan media seems to have the free environment to practice that, to stretch that freedom up to the extent guaranteed by the law. what we are yearning for is good governance. But can that be attained with the advantages that come with mobile journalism, citizen journalism, where had no one documented how Alfred Keter was abducted, today it will be a different story. Had Joshua's case not been amplified, today it will be another story. Is it aiding in the attainability of good governance, given the gross failure by successive governments in Kenya in failing to meet the expectations of the public?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and it's helping a lot in terms of just highlighting issues. Digital and the digital space has provided a platform where people can express themselves freely, but of course, as the Mr. William said, it's very important for us to respect the freedoms and the privacy of each individual. But at the end of the day, that space has really grown, and everyone is using that space to agitate for what they want to agitate. Mm-hmm. And again, providing fodder and providing feed for the mainstream media to cover that. And I think going forward, as he mentioned, it's a complementary approach that one should look at, that yes, the public can provide that information, they can record that, they can be able to air that, but again, there is that need for the media again to play its role. As much as there's that freedom for them to be able to highlight issues, there is always that bit of professionalism, ensuring that the public is getting the right information. And again, just looking at objectivity, how objective is the media? Has the media been objective in the way it's airing its content? Has the media, been following the ethics that it ought to follow? And that helps, again, in just making sure that the space, again, as we continue to do our bit as journalists, also the public has a responsibility to be able to work in that space, to be able to enlighten the issues that are coming up in the public.
And William, coming to you, in the context of an operational newsroom, a story before it goes on air is subjected to editorial standards and decisions that are made to avoid a possible litigation. But here you have a mushrooming of mobile journalists who are not regulated, but they are putting out information with no regard for the content, whether graphic or not, whether it qualifies as a hatred message or one that can lead to incitement. Given the number keeps on growing then and technology keeps on advancing, how then can regulatory measures be put in place here? Though the advantages are many and numerous, there are also disadvantages on the flip side, aren't they?
Yes, certainly so. One thing that we really need to, first of all, to draw a broad outline is that it is a best practice, it's in international best practice that the internet ought not to be overregulated because there is greater benefit of not overregulating it than harm. But regulatory-wise, here in Kenya, of course, there is a mushrooming number of citizen journalists, bloggers, people who are within that space. All is not lost. Because in my time as the chairperson of the Media Complaints Commission, and also in partnership with the Media Council of Kenya, we have put in place several mechanisms to try to infuse both training and also an adherence to professional ethics. One example that I can give, there is a Bloggers Association of Kenya, the BLAC. It is an association that brings together people who practice within that space. So what we did is that we trained them on the essence of media ethics, and we came up with what is called a digital editor's code, something that will guide them. Issues of accuracy, issues of fairness, balance, and all that, the need to protect children. So once that code is there, what we made, we emphasize to them, there is a principle of self-regulation, and that is what we've been attaining to establish in Kenya. We told them these are the standards, this is the framework. It is very possible for you as an association to self-regulate. It is even a principle of peer review, such that if you know all these your members, if one member breaches, then you will be able to peer review and hold that member into account. And luckily, a great majority of those people have signed up. So it is only when a member breaches and there is no resolution, or that person who is affected is not satisfied, that is when you can escalate. But I emphasize again, there should not be over-regulation of the internet because there is more benefit and less harm than doing that.
Joshua, 25th of June will remain forever etched in the memories of many Kenyans, and this is largely as a result of mobilization of young Kenyans which happened through the online media. Has it forever changed Kenya's governance landscape from where you sit?
Definitely, Ayub. Actually, sometimes I sit down and I think to myself, if we didn't have these digital platforms, then mobilization in this era and times would be very difficult. But the fact that the agitation started online, the agitation started on WhatsApp groups, the agitation started on X Spaces, the agitation started on TikTok, and people were actually speaking languages that their audience can understand. Those that understand Sheng best were spoken to in Sheng. Those that understand English best were spoken to in English. And those who understand every other language were spoken to in different languages. So really, I can say that what culminated into the win that the people of Kenya had on 25th of June was greatly contributed to by digital spaces. It was greatly contributed to by digital spaces because, look, we had people from every corner of the country, from every major town in Kenya coming out to say, look, we want an accountable government, we want a transparent government, we want a government that listens, we want a government that is ready and willing, all right, to progress the agenda that is going to improve the lives and livelihoods of the people of Kenya. That was done on Spaces. That was done on TikTok. That was done through videos. There are people who just watch a video, they were like, no, I think now I need to go to the streets. The people who just attended one space and they had people talking and with a lot of conviction that it is time that all of us come out to speak and say enough is enough. And that was enough to convince them to go to the streets. Okay. So had we not have the digital spaces, had we not have this, what we are loosely calling citizen journalism, honestly, it wouldn't have turned out as it turned out on the 25th of June. Okay. So yes, it greatly contributed, and we have seen change. Much as we are seeing our demands have not been met fully, but at least we've seen something. We've seen someone getting to a point they're like, no, I really need to rethink. Then I need to get my cabinet back, reorder my cabinet, which has not been done rightfully so, but at least there was something. Yeah. We have seen an inspector of inspector of police stepping down. That is something. We have seen changes. We have seen the government calling the opposition to the table and saying, look, it is time we get back together to unite the people of Kenya. It is not unity in itself, but at least that is an indication that what started as an online agitation is resulting to a change that we would want to see moving forward.
Thank you. Mashara, I have a specific question for you, but first, let's also pick this voice from the online platform. It's a conversation on X, and we have someone with a query, question, or observation that he or she has made regarding this topic that we are discussing here. We can listen in. Okay, at checks on X, that is the conversation, which is equally online on X. If you can hear me, please, a question, a query, an observation. All right, as we do that, and we'll be getting that question. So the auditorium is also full of Kenyans who are here with us. The roving microphone will be coming to you. Anyone? Yes, the gentleman in the suit. Let's start from there. If it's a question, start by your name. The question, be precise and brief. Unaweza zungumza Kiswahili pia ukitaka. Tafadhali.
So good evening. My name is Dennis Juma. So my question actually is directed to you, Ayub. Mm-hmm. I think we've been on the streets for the longest time, And about the mainstream media, do you fully feel like you have the right to practice your justice on showing the nation and all the wananchi that this is what is happening? Because I mean, not apart from X or maybe other social media, there are some of the information that you're getting that are being, the government is like trying to hide it away from the people to know. So do you feel as a journalist that you have all the rights, or maybe you feel like all the things that you need to give to the community or the people is reaching out to them? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll answer you. Yes, the gentleman in the suit here. And then I don't have ladies apparently. Yes, and then I'll come to you next. Yeah. We took the whole three.
Good evening. My name is Eric Ajufle, and my question is directed to you, Ayub.
Okay.
Yeah, the role of journalism in the contemporary society.
Yes.
And the impartiality of the journalism. We've been having undocumented number of stories being undocumented, or rather there have been no reporting on the grassroots level. What are you doing to address those issues, particularly in the ground root level? Thank you.
Yeah, is there a specific case that you want us to zero in? Okay. Yes, the gentleman just behind you, yeah. And then.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
My name is Ondimu Atera. My question is directed to Mr. Okayo, my good friend. For the benefit of the Republic, kindly elucidate on what hate speech is, so that we may know, in the context of journalism, what hate speech entails. Thank you.
Yeah. You want to specify?
Yeah. My dad actually, I have an issue with my dad his right has been violated, and we reported the issue. Nothing has been done. The Standard Media Group. And it was about illegal deduction of his salary. And now I want the issue being reported, actually, because we've not gotten justice for his case.
He's an employee there?
Yeah. He was working at TSC.
At Teacher Service Commission?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's take the lady and then the gentleman.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My question is directed to you, Ayub. So I'm wondering, has the media been compromised in this season? Because most of the reporting looks like Fulani's child has allegedly been shot. Are you telling us that you think they've been shot, or are you reporting that they actually have been shot? The reporting is Fulani allegedly said that Fulani was allegedly shot. Whose job is it to tell us what's happening? Has the media been compromised? Please tell us the truth. Also, is the media able to act on its own? Is the media able to tell us what exactly is happening without fear of being silenced, without fear of being told, we'll shut down your TV station? Is it possible to get all the numbers? Because he's also mentioned something about we're not getting all the statistics. There are people who have been missing for the longest time. There are people who are shot. Then we're hearing that apparently BBC has said there was no massacre. But we live in this country and we see what's going on. So is the media going to tell us? Is the media with us? Is it against us? Has it been compromised? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the final one. Yeah, the last one, yeah. This gentleman, yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for the insightful comments that we have had. My name is Duncan Onyango. I'm a lecturer at the Technical University of Kenya. And I want to draw my question from what happened in 2007-2008 during the 2007 election and then the subsequent post-election violence. We know the circumstances that happened, especially on the media. There was a media blackout Then the national media, KBC, was called, and we had an announcement being made, Mimi Mwai Kibaki. How far are we from there? What gains have we made, and how sure are we that such a thing cannot happen in a mainstream media that is largely regulated by the government, licensed and regulated by the government? What is the strength of the line that separates us from the events of 2007? A quick one related to it is the digital media, the citizen journalism that we are talking about that predominantly relies on the internet, that is controlled and monopolized by Safaricom and the government. So that what happens, one day we can just go into an internet blackout and anything happens. How safe are we, and what can we do? Maybe from a journalistic point of view, even from a legal point of view, what protects us as a nation if the government should decide just to send us into an internet blackout, similar to the media blackout that we have? Then lastly, the independence of the mainstream media. I'm not sure if Ayub Abdikadir will be able to comment about this authoritatively. Yes. When, for example, we know the chairman of the Royal Media Services in the last election took a partisan stand on one of the political sides. And we know that Citizen TV and the Royal Media stations are some of the media houses, the mainstream media houses that really rely. How as a citizen, from a citizen point of view, who was whichever political sides you are in, especially from 2022, if you are on the other side of the political divide, how then do I still trust the independence of Citizen TV or the Royal Media and be able to separate the chairman from Royal Media Services? Thank you.
Thank you. Then we have one question from Taleb at Taleb on X before we respond to. Yes, is it at Taleb on X, the online community which is following this discussion?
Yes, am I audible? Yes, good evening. My name is Taleb Ogola. So I wanted to ask this because the last interview that the likes of Latif had with the president, President William Ruto, I was a bit disappointed with the media conduct. You people kept on asking questions which actually seemed like you people were there to just corner the president with answering questions that were actually irrelevant. I mean, if you are interviewing the president, you should give him the chance to answer the questions before you chip in with another one. So I was just asking, how are you people as the media itself, how are you ensuring that there's accountability when you people send such kind of personalities to question the president? And how do you uphold professionalism? That's it. That's just it.
Okay, thank you. So much of the questions were directed to me. I won't respond to the final one, but I will respond to all the others. And Joshua, there's one for you. So allow me to exhaust the
Can I leave the stage for you?
Yeah, the questions? Yeah, you can chip in, no, not a problem.
Yeah. Leave the stage and leave you answer the questions.
So the first question was on the role of journalism on contemporary issues. Yeah, so the profession is largely considered as an estate of its own, fourth. So ours is a complementary role in the sense that we act as an avenue between those you, the Kenyan people, have given the mandate to govern over you, and you, the people. So ours is now to create that channel of communication in this way, that there must be accountability for the taxes that you pay, for example. And this translates into good governance so that you can get better healthcare, you can get functional infrastructure, you can get good education, which isn't a privilege but a right for you as a Kenyan citizen under the Bill of Rights and our current constitutional order. Therefore, ours is to play that pivotal role, to act as the fulcrum between you, the taxpayer, and those who you have handed over power, who govern over you over a period of time before they get back to you, the people, and seek a fresh mandate. And then that is a responsibility which you have sovereign over, whether you want to extend their term for another 5 years or not, because you have that right under law to go to the ballot and vote. So in that essence, the consequence of journalism and the profession is then to create awareness amongst the people. Look, we have no powers to, for example, prosecute those who do bad with your taxes, those who steal, government officials. But what we can do is, by virtue of spotlighting their wrongs, we empower you. That translates into making a decision of getting people with integrity, people who will look after your resources in the next time when the election comes. And the beauty about it is that we have set our election times, the dates of our election, in the Constitution. We know after every 5 years, the Kenyan people will head to the ballot and exercise their right. That right grants them the opportunity to sieve amongst the many of those who are seeking leadership positions, both from at the MCA level up to the presidency. You sieve, you have the opportunity to listen to them and grant that power and mandate to the people who you deem or who you see as fit in looking after your resources, people with integrity and who largely align with Chapter 6 of the Constitution, which has the characterization of what the Constitution establishes. Therefore, ours is to act as that balancing point between you and those who are in power. Ours is timeliness, because the profession for many of us is a lifetime profession. It isn't set in time, but one generation after the other of the profession will help you get that information which empowers your thinking and empowers the society to make critical decisions that will get them good governance at the ballot. All right? The second question was on... you had a matter with the TSC, which you said the media hadn't reported. Did you reach out to specific media about the complaints for highlighting purposes? Because this is the point. Look, everyone within the society, we have no regard for class. We have no regard for status. Ours is to hear. Ours is to amplify the voices of the commoners. Because you are the constant factor in all this equation. I mean, you are the bearers of the powers. And any media house, any organization, always prioritizes to hear from the common person. There's no one day, if you get to the gates of any media organization, you'll be locked out. Because if we can't hear you, then it means then that is unfair. Unfair in the sense that we are not getting your voices heard. And the platform that we offer to you or any other person or anyone seated here is critical, because we all aspire to have a functional system where everyone gets justice. It isn't only an issue that affects, for example, your kin or a friend or a relation, but all Kenyans. Therefore, our gates are not closed to any party. We have no specifications as to who to listen to and who not to listen to. In fact, the priority should be the common person whose voice is important and who is the common taxpayer that we all at the time focus on him, on her, or her to get their voices heard and amplify using our platforms. Because we are here for you, and we are here for you to get the information that you require in order to make informed decisions. Therefore, at no point will the gates of any media house be closed in hearing from a common person, whether it's your dad, it's your kin, relation, or any other party.
And then Ayub,
yes?
Just a minute before we continue, because also he touched on grassroots. How do you get to tell about grassroots and community-based stories? Let me tell you, people don't understand the power of this particular form, because as I said when I was starting that, the mainstream cannot cover everybody. They only have like 1 hour, and these days they have reduced it to almost 30 minutes because people are already aware of what is going on. For example, like for your case where your father maybe didn't get justice in form of the TSC, do you have a smartphone? If you have a smartphone, that is enough tool to create awareness, because that's what I even say, that the role of the media is to create awareness, but not to prosecute, nor to be able to, it's just to give you information, and they say information is power. If you have this particular mobile phone, you can be able to articulate your issues. You can be able to put your issues out there so that you can be heard. And this is because of the notion that we had from forever and from way back, that the power of the mainstream. People forgetting that now with the internet, that's a platform by itself where you can be able to articulate your issues. Take that video, tag TSC, write your issues there. Say that this person has not been paid. And let me tell you, people who are associated with that particular TSC, they will see, they will hear, and they will maybe, if they're supposed, they will do what they're supposed to be doing. And that is what is called holding people to account. And that is what citizen journalism is here to do, to hold people into accountability. When you are there out there demonstrating, a police officer is arresting you, and you're seeing somebody being facing police brutality. This is your phone. This is your personal gadget. Take that video. A police should not intimidate you. As long as he's doing the right thing, he's not supposed to intimidate you with your phone. Take that, and that is what citizen journalism is here to do.
Yeah. And once you tag even TSC or the party that you're seeking solutions from, you can as well tag the media houses on X. I mean, that is picked up from, then follow-up can be done. If you're in a remote area, then our teams will be dispatched, and your story should and must be heard. To the lady's question, has the media been compromised? No. Is the media able to act on its own? Yes. Have you been silenced? No. And if events of the 25th of June 2024 have been covered, which is unprecedented in many ways, when protesters partly breached the security fence of Parliament because they were aggrieved with the conduct of their parliamentarians, and many had argued that all sovereign power always belongs to the people of Kenya, as Article 1 enshrines. Therefore, if we had given limelight to such an event of momentous scale and the environment around the country that day, which was largely fearsome, it will be unfair if I say we have been compromised. But are there attempts to always, all the time, affect the operations of the media? Yes. Any government doesn't want a free media that allows its people to be made aware about events that happen. The Jubilee Party under President Uhuru Kenyatta had sponsored the Security Amendments Bill in December 2014, which had largely affected the media fraternity, and the stakeholders came out and decried about that. Some sections were scrapped out by a court of law. And the conduct of the present administration and how some officials have come out, the likes of Senator Senator Aaron Cheriot, saying that the media is also a cartel that must be crushed and that something must be done by the current government. This tendency